Joining me now is Brendan Buck, former press secretary for former VP candidate Paul Ryan and an MSNBC political analyst, and Amisha Cross, Democratic strategist and former Obama campaign advisor. It's good to have you both back. So, ladies first, Amisha. What is the podium position advantage, and does it outweigh who gives the final closing statement? Does Biden want Trump's words to be the final message of the night, and if so, why?
Well, many people think that the podium advantage location is because of where your eyes directly go when you're watching television. Typically speaking, the person who has the last word, in most cases, is the person who is the most memorable. Acknowledging that Donald Trump is going to be a wily character because he has been 5,000 times over and is guaranteed to say extremely offensive things, I think that having him go last could actually be that searing moment where he says something that turns off a majority of Americans, particularly those in the swing states, particularly those votes that are necessary to actually maintain real leverage in this upcoming election. But I do think that to have allowed Donald Trump to have the last word, it means that there is an ace in the back pocket for the Biden campaign, because typically that is not a chosen method unless you already know that you are going to sell something that is unexpected. So I would say pay attention to how Biden performs in this upcoming debate, because there are going to be some surprises.
Interesting take. So, Brendan, the Trump team has repeatedly called Biden sleepy, incoherent, unable to put a sentence together. Have they set too low of a bar for the president, and are they now trying to reverse course?
Yeah, they and every other Republican seemingly in the country and conservative media, no doubt. Yeah, there is an expectation that Joe Biden is incapable of completing a sentence. And every time that there have been big moments like this, notably the State of the Union, it's been a bit deflating for Republicans when that is the level of expectation. Now, I do think, though, that there is a high bar that Joe Biden is going to need to be able to meet. People are going to be looking for this from Joe Biden. Has his age caught up with him? You know, people are now tuning in. They're just really starting to pay attention. I've heard a lot about Joe Biden's age. Has he slipped? This may be the first time that a lot of people are going to be seeing him be challenged in any meaningful way. So there is a lot of risk for him in this situation of whether he does have a moment where either he falters or Trump can step in and really push the gas against him. So I think this is a relatively very high stakes debate, actually. Most debates don't actually end up moving the numbers very much, but I think this one in particular is extremely important.
You know, it's interesting because these men are 3 years apart in age, 81 and 78. I mean, it's not like either of them is a spring chicken. But let's go to Axios and the reports from them, Amisha, that some senior Democrats are wary of Biden's strategy that's focusing on democracy, on political violence, on Trump's character. How much will the debate itself shape strategy? And could Biden change course midstream?
I absolutely think that Biden will change course midstream. It's important to understand the policy, but it's also important to know that America is on the brink of, quite frankly, if Trump is reelected, not having a democracy at all. We've all seen what Project 2025 looks like, and we've all heard Donald Trump say that he would be a dictator on day one. But I think that this debate is going to be more focused on the barbs that Donald Trump tries to throw directly at President Joe Biden than anything else. We know that he is going to go low for Donald Trump. The bar is held. And I think that he's going to go as deep and hard in the paint as he possibly can, and that Joe Biden has to not become rattled by that. He has to attack former President Trump in the same types of ways. He's got to show his strength in that capacity. We know that Trump is going to go after Hunter Biden. We know that he is going to say a lot of things that are quite frankly untrue, because he does that in debate after debate. He's going to have to fact check him in real time as well. He's got a lot that he's going to have to juggle at the same time. And I think that Joe Biden is up to the task of doing so.
Let me ask you quickly, Brenda, before I get to the question I really meant to ask. With regard to Hunter Biden, do you think that Americans would want to see him pretty strongly push back against Donald Trump? Because this is a father about a son.
Yeah, absolutely. And I expect that's what they'll do. And I think Donald Trump needs to tread very carefully here. I think this election is going to be decided by what we call the double haters, people who don't like either one of these candidates. And I think Donald Trump would be wise to be a little bit on good behavior, because if he comes out and is obnoxious and he looks mean and he reminds those people why they don't like him, if he is the most hateable among the for the double haters, that could be really bad. And going after someone's son who has struggled with addiction is a pretty could certainly come across as a pretty unseemly thing to do.
What about the Biden poll numbers that are trending upwards? According to Fox News, that one has them up by 2 points, so it is within the margin of error at this point. Does that show you that Biden's strategy is working?
It might. That poll is notable. It sort of stands out as showing Biden ahead. It is encouraging for the Biden campaign because that poll has been trending in Biden's direction steadily month after month. It's gotten better and better for him. So rather than just sort of a snapshot, I think it's encouraging for them that it's trending in the right direction. Of course, this election is going to come down to a number of swing states. And over the coming weeks and months, we're going to start seeing more polls in those states that are actually going to decide the election. But if you're the Biden campaign, yeah, it's got to be encouraging that you're finally starting to see what should all of the external factors, the conviction, the economy, these things should eventually start trending in your direction. So it's got to be encouraging for them.
What about, Amisha, a new Politico magazine, an Ipsos poll? And that one found 21% of independents say Trump's conviction matters to their vote and makes them less likely to support him. There's only 5% that say they're more likely to support Trump. Is that significant? And how important is winning over independents for Biden to blunt any Democratic votes that he may lose?
I think it's extremely significant. This entire time, Donald Trump has made a habit of being able to push off actually being accountable for a majority of things that he has been charged with. But in New York, he was found guilty on multiple felony charges. We're talking 30 plus felony charges. Now he is convicted of those things by a jury of his peers. That makes a difference. And for those swing voters in those, that handful of states that Brendan just talked about, I think that it's really going to matter because this is the same Donald Trump who has run on a law and order campaign. Law and order has finally caught up to him, and now he wants to dismantle the very system that found him guilty. I think that it matters to voters to have someone who is not a criminal in office. That's a really big thing for a lot of undecided voters.
Should President Biden, Amisha, should he hammer it home that this is a man who's been convicted on 34 felony counts? Is that something he should really hit hard during the debate?
He absolutely should. And I know his surrogates have been hitting it on the campaign trail as well. At this point, there is no recourse. We know that Trump is going to come back and try to appeal, but he has been found guilty on a multitude of felony charges. That matters, especially when he's out here trying to paint cities that are predominantly Black as being disgusting, as being crime-ridden, as everybody who is entering the country at our southern border being a criminal. This is a guy who's literally been convicted. He has to paint that picture.
Okay. Last question to you, Brendan. It's relative to the Washington Post, which reports Biden's message against Trump is that he's even worse than before. How do you get across to the voters that Trump will be more dangerous in a second term and follow through on more of his threats?
Yeah, I think that's a fine enough frame, but I think they need to be a little more specific about it. It is a very reasonable concern that they have, that all of the things that we hear about, that people know about Donald Trump, his actions, his statements, it all tends to sort of wash over you. And it's very easy to just sort of accept that, oh, he's sort of the crazy one. And yeah, well, I can look past that. You have to make both for your base to get them fired up, but also for those swing voters to remind them that this isn't just going to be the good things you remember about his time, that he has actual policy changes that are going to be even worse than what you remember, that he's going to come in with a bunch of people around him who are going to serve no role in restraining him. They're only going to encourage his worst instincts. You have to rile people up and you have to remind people, because otherwise we're so numb to everything that he has done. But I do think unless that pivots to some type of economic message and some answer on immigration, which are the top two issues that people care about, it's a little insufficient. We haven't quite seen them figure that part out yet.
Yeah, I think it's a thing commonly called Trump amnesia. Anyway, Brendan, it's good to see you, Amisha, as well. Thank you guys so much. We'll look forward to seeing you both again.